Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the primary motivation for the amendment is being driven by, I would say, external factors and pressures, FATF, and also to maintain membership in the Edmond Group. What I would want to ask, Minister, I'm aware that there are MOUs between the FID and other local agencies. For example, MOCA, possibly the Integrity Commission. Is it that the amendment that you're proposing now will supersede those MOUs? And is it that in the exchange of information, either way, that FID will still require an MOU from any other local or overseas entity? Or will the amendment be to the Act allow the Chief Technical Director the discretion to determine who he shares or receives information from?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the establishment of the Financial Investigations Division and its role in the context of law enforcement in Jamaica, especially in the area of financial crimes, is an important institutional advance which has been with us now for well over a decade. As the Minister had indicated, the Egmont group of countries are like-minded in their determination to stamp out financial crimes and see the cooperation between their members as vital to the efficiency of that objective. And therefore, it is important that Jamaica's law be constantly kept abreast of any requirements that may emerge so that we are considered to be reliable partners by other countries within the Egmont group, and that the law facilitates the type of mutual cooperation which is needed to effectively tackle financial crimes, domestic and international. Accordingly, the bill enjoys the support of the opposition insofar as it pursues that objective. I have 2 points I wanted to raise in relation to the actual draft before us. The first point, and I'm going to take them in not in order of importance, but in the order that they come in the bill itself. So in clause 2 of the bill, which amends section 12 of the Principal Act, there is some new sections which are replacing existing sections in section 12. And in the new subsection 2, there is a reference which I wondered if it is sufficiently clear what the scope of it is. So subsection 2 says that the Chief Technical Director, who is the head of the FID, the Financial Investigations Division, may give to or receive from any public body in Jamaica or any foreign financial intelligence department or association of such departments any information necessary to enable the division or that body or department or association of departments, as the case may be, to exercise regulatory functions, including the conduct of civil, criminal, or administrative investigations and proceedings, and these are the words I'm concerned about, to enforce laws administered by the division, body, department, or association of departments. Now, it isn't clear to me what laws are administered by the FID. Because when you look at the FID Act, it doesn't list, to the best of my knowledge, those laws which are to be administered by the FID. It, in broad terms, speaks to what the objects of the FID are. And it says, for example, that the objects of the FIDR to investigate all categories of financial crimes, to collect information and maintain intelligence databases on financial crimes, etc. But we're using a formulation here of laws administered by the division. Now, there could be, for example, a situation in which a breach of the Companies Act has arisen in an area which constitutes potentially a financial crime. It could be to do with ultimate beneficial ownership of a company in Jamaica, for example, and the question of who really owns this company and what have you. Now, is that section of that law which could be engaged? Could it be said that the Companies Act is administered by the FID? Clearly not, because it isn't. The Companies Act is administered by the Companies Office of Jamaica. So, and that's just one example. And I could probably cite several potential situations in which the FID might be wishing to investigate a matter and have jurisdiction to do so under the FID Act and the scope of it. But it couldn't be said that the law that is engaged in that investigation is a law that's administered by the division. And so I was questioning the formulation of words used, because it's a scoping provision. It goes to the jurisdiction to share this information. That's what this provision does. So if the scope is too narrow or is unclear, it could be problematic. It could be contested in court, for example, and that sort of thing. So I was wondering whether a better formulation could be considered. I had attempted one. I'm not saying it's by any means perfect, but I was suggesting, for example, rather than talk about civil criminal administrative investigations proceedings to enforce laws administered by the division, you could say civil criminal administrative investigations proceedings to enforce laws, the enforcement of which fall within the statutory functions of the division, which is a bit broader than the idea of the division administering those specific laws, which it may not, in fact, do. So that's a technical point, and the drafters can consider it and see if they feel there's any merit to it or not. But it's an important point because it goes to the scope of this amendment, and therefore is the sort of thing that if there's a problem with it, it could be contested in court. The other point I wanted to raise is in relation to the new subsection 4 of clause 12. And this is setting out the parameters in which the chief technical director is authorized to disclose information about a Jamaican citizen, potentially to a foreign department, foreign law enforcement agency. And in paragraph B, it says that the chief technical director has to be satisfied. And in subparagraph 2, it says the information to be disclosed to the relevant party, which would be the overseas law enforcement agency, for example, or a public body here in Jamaica, that information, that disclosure is required for the purposes of the relevant party's functions, including the conduct of civil, criminal, or administrative investigations. That's fine. I agree with that. So if the disclosure is required for the purposes of that entity's functions, then yes, I can see why we'd want to share that information. But the question to my mind is, why would you want to share it with them if it's not required for the purposes of their functions? And if you look at subparagraph 1 of B, it allows the disclosure as an alternative. It's disjunctive. So it may not be required for the purposes of that entity's functions, but yet the chief technical director could share it with them, could disclose it to them. And that I have a problem with. I don't see why we would be doing that. Why would we be allowing the sharing of information which is not required by the functions of the entity that's receiving the information? And to me, that opens the door too wide. And I would like to see that door have appropriate limits around it. Yes, subsection 1 says that if you're going on the basis that it may not be required for their functions, but you're sharing sharing it with them nonetheless, you need to have a confidentiality undertaking from them, or some other written undertaking from them not to disclose it. But that to me is not sufficient. If it's not required for their functions, then why should it be shared with them at all? And I don't know the answer to that question, and that's why I've raised it here. I think subparagraph B is sufficient and covers the proper ground. And I'm not sure why we need to expand that ground beyond subparagraph 2 of paragraph B in the new section 4. Maybe there's a good answer to it, but I would like to hear what that is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Manchester Southern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to ask about the new subsection 4. And the minister, in her opening of the debate on the bill, spoke to subsection 4 being intended to give operational independence to the FID. And therefore, it would allow them to enter these memoranda of understandings without reference to the minister. But then it goes on to say it must be consistent with subsection 4A1, the Constitution of Jamaica and laws of Jamaica, which is fine. And then 2, it says government policy. But it doesn't, that to my mind leaves it very broad. What determines government policy? And the minister spoke to some examples, but government policy on a particular issue could be dictated in a letter.
Question, member. Oh, no.
Mr. Speaker, would you pay attention? I am participating in a debate. I'm not asking a question. Sir. May I proceed? May I proceed, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, may I proceed? Thank you. So
Mr. Speaker,